Michael Brown assaulted an officer and went for the gun. Freddie Gray fled police. All the officers in this were cleared. Alton Sterling reached for a loaded gun during the struggle. Rayshard Brooks stole a taser and fired it at an officer. Jacob Blake, knife in hand, felony warrant, fought the officers. Breonna Taylor, her boyfriend fired first from the apartment at an officer, yet the headlines for her were unarmed angel targeted by racist police performance. And as always, the later footage drops, the part that showed exactly who Alex Preddy actually was.
January 13th in Minneapolis, showing a man who appears to be Alex Preddy interacting with federal immigration agents 11 days before Border Patrol shot and killed him.
She's unveiling some profound human rights truth from a press tour.
I could not be prouder to be American right now by the way the Americans are acting.
Welcome to Stay in the Fray podcast. I'm your host, Ryan. This is where headlines get hit hard, hypocrisy gets shredded, and the absurd are laughed at. If you want comfort, this isn't your place. If you want blunt and unfiltered, I'm your guy. Join me in the fray.
All you gotta do is just listen up.
Hey guys, man, I am fed up with the lack of respect for law enforcement in this country. I'm at my breaking point with the treatment of the officers and the agents, and it's been building for a while. So that's kind of what I want to talk about. I don't understand this need to demonize the wrong people. So we've got Renee Good. I did an episode about her, I think it was the last one, so go back and check that out. She rammed her car into ICE agents after stalking them and impeding them for weeks. And then the amazing, wonderful nurse, Alex Preddy, was killed. 2 people killed by ICE agents. 2 people who absolutely broke the law. They were not murdered or executed, like so many are saying. This is a headline that you people are jumping on without full context. You're glorifying people who are breaking the law. This dude, Preddy, shows up to federal operation, an ICE mission with actual legal orders to detain illegal immigrants. This guy's carrying a gun and 2 extra loaded magazines. He inserts himself, he interferes, he resists, he ignores every command. Somehow, he becomes the victim of the story. Why did he bring 2 extra magazine rounds? Come on. You don't do that if you think things are going to be peaceful. You have the right to peacefully protest. This is not it. What's happening to these agents across the country, this isn't it. I say across the country, it's really just a couple of poorly led cities that are seeing this happen. Let me get this in there. Nobody wants someone to die because of their own stupid choices. But that's exactly what this was. A consequence. A preventable one. Definitely not something worthy of sainthood or martyrdom. But the left, oh boy, they collapsed into a meltdown like clockwork. They wait for headlines like this. Have you noticed that? They live for it. They don't even bother with the facts. They just jump straight to the performance. And as always, the later footage drops, the part that showed exactly who Alex Preddy actually was and the stuff he actually did leading up to the incident. It wasn't some sweet, innocent nurse who was tackled and abused and shot and executed. Here's a reminder. Let's go ahead and play it.
January 13th in Minneapolis, showing a man who appears to be Alex Preddy interacting with federal immigration agents 11 days before Border Patrol shot and killed him. Our footage was analyzed by the BBC, whose facial recognition technology confirmed his identity to a 97% degree of accuracy.
Yeah, I think it was proven already by many sources that was legitimate video of Alex Preddy. This is your nurse. This is your wonderful human being. You can't do that. You can't kick a fucking car, a law enforcement vehicle, spit on officers and expect retaliation. There, they just tackled him, and he came back a week later with a loaded gun. Come on. He has stalked and impeded law enforcement quite a bit. So after all this outrage, all this fake activism, all this chaos from people who think yelling injustice makes them freedom fighters. Oh, and who, by the way, I haven't seen a single one say, you know what, I posted all this bullshit about how amazing Alex Preddy was, and maybe I should have, I don't know, waited 2 fucking seconds before sharing my feelings. And because Once people are on a team and they hop on one side of an issue, like, oh, Alex Preddy was amazing, they're not going to dare move to the correct side when they see footage, even if those facts present themselves. So after all that, here's where I landed. The purpose of this episode. When did mostly liberal America stop respecting its own law enforcement? It's a simple question. When did criminals become the heroes and the officers become the villains? And who taught an entire generation that fighting a federal agent is some sort of moral victory? We got politicians in Minneapolis, which is the major, seems to me like it's not a coincidence, with these three jokers. You got Walls and Omar and Fray pouring gasoline on the mobs. We got celebrities pretending they've read the Constitution. We got journalists who are filming the chaos that they helped create. Is this like the new cool trend for you people to speak out against law enforcement, to cheer on anarchy in the streets? Does it make you feel good about yourselves? Just more virtue signaling? All these moms on social media acting like anyone who supports immigration law is a monster, hates kids, wants to see families suffer. Get the fuck over yourselves. You are not a better mom for playing the virtue signal card. What about the kids of the ICE agents? What about the mother of those kids? I want to tear this whole thing apart. The politics of it, yes, but the misinformation, this celebrity delusion, and the national pride that some people pretend to feel only when it lets them attack the people who actually hold this country together. I cannot believe it's even necessary to have to break this down to remind people who the heroes actually are. But here we are. If you're with me on this, enjoy, sit back, let's vent together. If you're defending this nonsense, you should probably stick around if you can handle it. I know you probably won't because that's how you are. You're unwilling to hear facts and context. This is Stay in the Fray podcast. Let's roll. God, I'm so ready to roll. So I will start basic for you. How did the whole anti-police nonsense actually start? Because it didn't come from data. It didn't come from reality. It came from a couple of loud politicians, a few viral clips, and a crowd that needed a reason to play victim. The defund the police meltdown was built off a tiny number of cases, like a handful, if that, all framed in the most dishonest way possible. And once that fire got lit, it spread like madness. So let me ask this, out loud for the people in the back. Even if you believe the worst version of those few cases that were highlighted, you still want to defund all police in a country with millions of crimes a year? Really? These geniuses are the ones that push the idea of replacing officers with social workers. Yeah, someone robs me at night in a parking lot, but thank goodness a social worker is on his way to have a heart-to-heart with a guy holding a gun. Maybe they'll ask him about his childhood while he rummages through my car. And like I said, this whole movement was built off cases that were twisted beyond recognition. Cases where the criminal suddenly became the misunderstood member of society and the cop became the villain. Let's look at my receipt list that I like to show you guys, because every one of these examples was shoved down America's throat with the truth conveniently altered. Michael Brown assaulted an officer and went for the gun. Freddie Gray fled police. All the officers in this were cleared. Alton Sterling reached for a loaded gun during the struggle. Rayshard Brooks stole a taser and fired it at an officer. Jacob Blake, knife in hand, felony warrant, fought the officers. Breonna Taylor, her boyfriend fired first from the apartment at an officer. Yet the headlines for her were unarmed angel targeted by racist police. Seriously, it was a framing, a carefully packaged story designed to make the suspect look like a saint and the officer look like a monster. Breonna's boyfriend was a criminal thug who shot at police, a drug dealer. Sadly, Breonna was caught in the crossfire, but it wasn't the officer's fault. And you guys don't understand this. I'm not cheering on death. I'm not happy that it happened to Breonna Taylor or any of the others I just listed. But actions have consequences, and sometimes they're drastic. Once you brainwash enough people with these types of storylines, they stop seeing officers as human beings. They see them as walking symbols of oppression instead of the people who run toward the danger when everyone else runs away. And how come none of the major news stories seem to care about any other races killed by police? You know, white people are also killed by police regularly. Not a little bit. Not once in a blue moon. all the time. And guess what? Some of those white victims had the same kinds of encounters the media turned into civil rights sagas when it was black. The same neck press technique was used against Timothy Kaufman, a white dude, in 2018, a few years before George Floyd, by the way. He was on another person's property, on drugs. It wasn't armed robbery, he wasn't hurting anybody, but he resisted arrest in his detainment. 2020, Edward Bronstein, 38, white. He screamed, "I can't breathe," 12 times. And that was just for resisting a blood sample being taken for a DUI check. 2016, in Dallas, Tony Tempa, a white dude, died from the same neck press, called 911 for his own mental health crisis that he was having. He called on himself. He was coked up. Those cops laughed at him and mocked him while he was trying to say, "You're going to kill me," for 14 minutes. Again, he called 911 on himself. There were no crimes committed. If anything deserved marches and the movement that would become of it, that would have been it. So all those guys died too. There were no marches, no say his name, no celebrities reading scripted monologues from mansions and podiums. Nobody gave a damn. Why? Because that case didn't fit the storyline that the activists needed. Victimhood has never been a strategy when it involves white people. And that's the point I'm making here. Those cops that killed that guy, that poor guy, and laughed at him and mocked him, were complete and utter assholes. And they should be punished. But it's not about the police in its entirety. The reaction changes depending on whether the death is usable for manufactured outrage. If it's a white suspect, the story vanishes. If it's someone they can turn into a symbol, boom, it's headline time. I just don't get it. Let me try and put this bluntly. Crime, compliance, behavior, they all shape police encounters. Always have, always will. There is a correlation between crime patterns, police-citizen encounters, shootings, resistance, fleeing, and what a suspect is holding, doing, or refusing. But the echo chamber activists pretend all that is irrelevant, that everything is pure racism, nothing else. It's dishonest, it's lazy, and it's dangerous. Because when you strip crime patterns out of the conversation, you erase the single biggest factor in police shootings: the behavior during the encounter. You resist, fight, run, reach, attack, pull a weapon, the danger skyrockets. It's true for every race, and it should be. I was raised to appreciate and respect the sacrifice that these men and women make every single day as law enforcement. I still thank police officers when I see them. They deal with things most people couldn't stomach for 5 fucking minutes. They show up to chaos, to violence, to death, to disasters. And they do it because someone has to keep the rest of us safe. Are they perfect? No, nobody is. And every once in a while, you'll notice you might meet a cop who's a little short-tempered, a little attitude maybe when writing that ticket for going 50 in a 35. But after the things that they see on the job, and now this lack of respect, I don't blame them for not acting like a Disneyland employee at every stop. But hating all of them, defunding them, blanket hatred, treating every officer like a villain, it's not activism, it's ungrateful. And it shows a total misunderstanding of how a community survives. This country would crumble without them. And that's exactly why the defund narrative was the moment that everything went sideways. And it's why today law enforcement on a different level is being attacked like we've never seen. It's about selective outrage. It's carefully curated, emotionally driven meltdowns, served to the public like it's the only truth that exists. America sees only the police incidents that the outrage industry wants you to see. You're only seeing the scuffles in Minnesota with ICE. Tens of thousands of deportations are taking place all over the country. You aren't seeing that success. You aren't seeing the self-deportations. Real quick, did you know that 600,000 illegal immigrants have been formally deported in 2025? How about 1.6 to 1.9 million people self-deported voluntarily? Some with pressure, sure, but some without. That's 75% of the total departures. And by the way, most are offered an easier path to return legally. So you're not seeing the full picture with ICE or with the police officers around the country. Not the real numbers, not the daily chaos that officers deal with, just the clips that fit the narrative. Let me remind you of something so obvious it should be laughable. Police shoot roughly 1,000 people a year. Not millions, not hundreds of thousands, about 1,000. The kicker is this: 90 to 95% of those people are armed. Gun, knife, car, assault, something that makes the situation escalated. But the public gets fed maybe 5 or 6 stories a year, the performative outrage highlight reel, and everyone acts like that handful represents the entire system. Meanwhile, over 22,000 people are murdered by other civilians every year. 22,000. 18,000 of those by firearms. Do you hear anyone screaming about that? The part that makes me sick is officers are being hunted. It doesn't even make the news. Over 100 officers are killed a year, ambushed, shot in their cars, lured into traps, executed while grabbing coffee on their break. Some years, a full 1/3 of officers killed were murdered in ambush attacks. Imagine what that does to the morale and a department's mental state. Imagine the pressure, the fear, the hypervigilance. But does the media cry for them? Light a candle? Rally the celebrities with pens? No. They're too busy canonizing criminals into folk heroes. Because if the media told the full story, people might start remembering that the police aren't out here roaming around looking for people to shoot. They're responding to shootings, domestic violence, armed robberies, assaults, drug deals, mental health crises, anything where weapons are involved. People fighting, resisting, reaching, fleeing, attacking. Every incident the outrage crowd posts online is missing the one thing that matters: context. If the media covered all police shootings with equal attention, the overall story would look completely different. So here we go. All that lead up to this. Let's talk about how we got from hating the police to hating ICE. Because it didn't really come out of nowhere. It's the natural sequel to the anti-police narrative. Just a new cast and a new outrage script. Here is what happened. I think that when the police are villains storyline started losing its steam, the activists needed a fresh start. Crime started dropping again. Cities quietly refunded police budgets. People realized social workers weren't going to stop armed robberies. The whole defund movement fizzled out like a wet match. The lack of respect still lingers. So when the outrage machine needed a new villain, someone else they could paint as the embodiment of evil, enter ICE. Federal agents doing their jobs. People enforcing immigration laws that were written by Congress. But sure, let's treat them like some kind of dystopian stormtroopers. Under Biden, the border was free-for-all. Fucking free-for-all. We've been through this. The media stays silent. 4 years of open borders. That's why it's having to be done this way now. Millions poured in, criminal aliens released into cities with zero oversight. Victims everywhere, from murder to rape to trafficking. But somehow no celebrity put the pin on for them. Then Trump wins again, reinstates enforcement, and suddenly ICE is murdering people. No, Susan. They're enforcing laws that have existed longer than you've been alive. And they're being attacked and impeded by idiots who think they have it all figured out. Trump is cleaning up the mess, which of course they also hate. When enforcement returned, the activist crowd lost their mind. They weren't ready for consequences. They weren't ready for law and order. They weren't ready for anyone telling them no. The second ICE showed up to detain illegal immigrants, which is literally the job, the meltdown began. Protesters started stalking these agents, mobs blocking operations, blocking traffic, people filming themselves interfering with federal law like it's some sort of cool, trendy new thing. Idiots pretending they understand the Constitution, which they clearly don't. Agitators screaming fascism while carrying backpacks full of bricks. Online influencers posting edited clips to fuel the message. They're not protesting policy, especially not peacefully. They're interfering with law enforcement operations. I can't say it enough, and I don't know why people still argue this. Listen closely. Attacking or obstructing ICE is a crime. It's not activism. It's not defending the vulnerable. It's not standing up to tyranny. It's interfering with federal officers who are carrying out legal directives. It's no different than tackling a cop during an arrest and then crying about state violence. The Alex Preddy and even Renee Good situations were the breaking point here, of course, because it exposed the insanity. You got a guy showing up armed with 2 loaded magazines, impeding officers, resisting, physically confronting them. We've been through this. And the entire internet treated him like he was Mother Teresa handing out cookies. Celebrities cried. Politicians were grandstanding. journalists pretending to investigate, and activists holding candles for a man who literally fought federal agents during a lawful operation, not peacefully protesting. And it was more than once. I showed you the video. He spit on him and kicked off a taillight. Meanwhile, ICE officers are being doxxed, followed, threatened, shot at, assaulted, smeared online, harassed in their own neighborhoods, treated like villains in someone else's fan fiction revolution. I don't blame him for being a little on edge. ICE became the new enemy because the outrage crowd needed a new punching bag. It's simple as that. So they latched on to immigration enforcement. Not because ICE is bad, but because ICE is. And you know who hates effective law enforcement? Criminals and politicians who rely on emotional voters. Celebrities who think being virtuous is a hobby. I got to address this. I know I'm going long and I've got some more I want to do, but here's one of the favorite arguments from the outrage crowd. So I'm going to address it. I'm hearing it all over and it's not going away. ICE is rounding up legal U.S. citizens. They're dragging them out of their home. This gets thrown around like it's gospel, but it's not. First off, ICE does not deport or arrest U.S. citizens as part of its immigration operations. They just don't. The Department of Homeland Security has explicitly stated that federal immigration agents do not roam neighborhoods looking to pick up Americans and kick them out of the country. This is so stupid that people really think this. If ICE ever encounters someone who turns out to be a lawful citizen during an operation, the correct procedure is to confirm their status and let them go. Most mistakes are reversed on the spot, and the person is released once citizenship is confirmed. Now, have there been isolated incidents where U.S. citizens were mistakenly detained or questioned? Yes. I'm not trying to tell you that it hasn't happened. It happens, and it is a legitimate concern. Criticize it based on sources. I'll give you some more receipts. About 170 U.S. citizens were detained or arrested by immigration agents in 2025, Trump's first year. Usually, it was because of misidentification or paperwork confusion, not because ICE is hunting Americans. That number might sound like a lot, 170, until you realize ICE is conducting hundreds of thousands of arrests and deportations in that same period. So yes, mistakes happen, and they should be worked out. But the idea that ICE is randomly dragging Americans off the street is just not backed up by the numbers or reality. They're just being released. Just cooperate if they show up. Just say, okay, everything will be fine. It'll be sorted out. They're not going to ship you off to some random country if you're here legally. No matter how many little single issues and incidents have happened where you believe that people were wrongfully this and that, whatever. It's just not happening. The courts and the Department of Homeland Security policies, they make it clear that ICE does not have the authority to deport U.S. citizens. If someone's citizenship is verified, they are released. In fact, claims that ICE targets U.S. citizens have been repeatedly debunked, yes, by the Department of Homeland Security, but also by independent fact checks. They're labeled as misinformation that unnecessarily scares the public. That is a huge part of how the narrative goes off the rails, turning isolated errors into sensational headlines rather than what they actually are, rare statistical blips in a massive enforcement system. And by the way, when the ICE agents are constantly looking around waiting to be attacked, or having to control the mob who's doing anything but peacefully protesting, mistakes are more likely to be made. All right, I want to get to the people pouring gasoline on this whole anti-ICE dumpster fire. The celebrities, the journalists, the influencers, living in multi-million-dollar homes with private security of their own, lecturing the rest of us about how law enforcement should work. These aren't leaders. These are performers, pretending to be constitutional scholars. Welcome to the fucking clown show. I'll talk about Don Lemon really fast. That's a whole nother topic, and the things I'm hearing in defense of him are absurd. We're going to make this very, very simple for you. There's no way you'll argue this after watching. I'm going to give you a quick clip here of what Don did.
This is the beginning of what's going to happen here. When you violate people's due process, when you pull people off the street, you start dragging them and hurting them and not abiding by the Constitution, when you start doing all of that, people get upset and angry. And if you remember what the Civil Rights Movement was about, the Civil Rights Movement was about these very kinds of protests. There's nothing in the Constitution that tells you what time you can protest. You can protest at any time. That's the whole point of it, is to disrupt.
Wow. Do you want peak stupidity? Yeah, watch Don right there walk into a private church with a mob, disrupt the service, incite a scene, film it all, and then act shocked when law enforcement steps in. His exact words: when you violate people's due process, start pulling them off the street, dragging them and hurting them, and not abiding by the Constitution, people get upset and angry. Okay, Donnie, so apparently the Constitution says you can trespass, interrupt worship, scream at families, harass people in their own house of faith. That's great reading comprehension, dumbass. Then he goes full genius. There's nothing in the Constitution that tells you what time you can protest. This may be the dumbest thing I've ever heard somebody say on camera or off. No, Don, it's not about the time. You're right. You can anytime. What you can't do is protest in someone else's building, no matter what time it is. You can't protest inside private property, no matter what time it is. You cannot protest in a church you don't belong to. Yes, no matter the time. The Constitution protects peaceful protest in public space, not whatever the hell you think the First Amendment is. And here's the best part. Don's entire meltdown with this church was based on false accusations of white supremacy that don't even exist. The man doesn't know the law. He doesn't know the Constitution. He doesn't even know what he's yelling about. He's an absolute joke. He deserved to be arrested. Anyone who doesn't agree, you're choosing feelings and your team over facts and laws. And then we've got Natalie Portman talking like she's unveiling some profound human rights truth from a press tour. Play this absurdity, guys.
Right now is absolutely horrific with what the federal government, Trump's government, Kristi Noem, ICE, what they're doing is really the worst of humanity. And then we also have the best of humanity for the way people are showing up for each other in community and Americans coming out to support each other and protect each other and fight against injustice. So I could not be prouder to be American right now by the way the Americans are acting. And I could not be sadder to be American right now with the way the government is behaving.
What a load of shit. What ICE is doing is the worst of humanity? Really? Not the murderers, the rapists, the violent criminals that ICE is literally arresting? Not them. The worst of humanity is agents enforcing immigration law. Natalie, sweetheart, reading scripts written by other people does not make you an expert on federal agencies or the real world. Then she doubles down. We have the best of humanity, the way people are showing up to protect each other and fight injustice. Translation, she's proud of the mobs attacking ICE agents, proud of the people blocking lawful arrests, proud of the people interfering in federal operations. Basically, she's cheering on anarchy because it feels good to these celebrities. It makes her feel like a good person. And then she actually says, I cannot be prouder to be American with the way Americans are acting. Which Americans? The ones assaulting ICE? The ones trying to free violent criminals before they're detained? You're not describing Americans, Natalie. Don't you dare claim that your bullshit narrative is the majority here, because it's not. The support for the duly elected president says otherwise. He ran on this. Mass deportations. You are describing a very loud, a very ignorant and annoying corner of activists who truly believe feelings override the law. And she ends with, I could not be sadder about the way the government is acting. Right, because following immigration law equals sadness now. Now to wrap up this trio of morons, Olivia Wilde. This is the absolute peak of clueless Hollywood talking points. Go ahead and roll the clip, guys.
The world is hurting right now, and this country is hurting, and it's appalling. I'm appalled. I'm sickened. And we can't go another day just sort of accepting this as our new norm. It's outrageous. People are being murdered. And I don't want to normalize seeing people being murdered on the internet, on film. It's hideous. And so if we can do anything out here to support the movement to cast ICE out, to delegitimize this unbelievably criminal organization, then that's what we should be doing. So I'm proud to wear the pin.
And it's great to see people with your platform to speak out against that kind of stuff, right? That you and so many great creatives here are doing that.
Well, I think so many Americans are. I mean, you see the marches happening around the country. Americans are speaking up in huge numbers, and it's dangerous to be a protester now, and people are still going out into the streets, which is incredibly inspiring.
Oh my God. I think there was a little bit more, but I just can't with... let's break it down. She starts with the world is hurting right now. Thanks, Olivia. She goes off the rails. I'm appalled. People are being murdered. Who are you talking about? Renee Good and Alex Preddy? Killed because they fought law enforcement with officers with an SUV and a gun. Not murdered. The false rhetoric must stop. Words actually mean something. Do you know who the only people actually being murdered in this immigration crisis are? Innocent Americans killed by illegal aliens who shouldn't have been here in the first place. Lake and Riley, we can go down the list if you'd like. They don't mention her name too much in Hollywood. And there are a lot of them, like I said. You're choosing to cry over the two people who fucked around and found out. Then she hits her award-winning line. Anything we can do to delegitimize ICE, this unbelievably criminal organization. A criminal organization. Not the repeat felons ICE is trying to detain. Not the people assaulting officers with cars, knives, guns, bricks. No, ICE is the criminal one. Wow, Olivia. She tops it all off. It's dangerous to be a protester now. No, Olivia, it's dangerous to attack federal officers. It's dangerous to ram vehicles into agents. It's dangerous to stalk ICE operations. If you protest peacefully in public, nobody cares. If you obstruct, there are consequences. It's not tyranny. That is the law. Here's what pisses me off more than anything. These celebrities never cry for the actual victims. I've been saying they never mention the Americans murdered by people who shouldn't have been here. They don't say the names of the people who were raped, assaulted, killed by criminal aliens, many of whom just waltzed in under the last administration like it was nothing. These people don't get Natalie Portman's tears. They don't get Olivia Wilde's speeches. They don't get Don Lemon's camera angle. Why? Because their deaths aren't useful to the narrative. These celebrities are not brave. They're not informed at all. They're not defending justice. They're just performers. They're reading outrage for applause, screaming for causes they don't understand, cheering for the criminals because it makes them feel morally superior somehow, ignoring innocent victims because their stories don't trend in their little bubble. And it's feeding a level of chaos that this country cannot afford. To wrap this all up, like I said, I know I've gone a little longer than I usually do. Let's do something the outrage crowd is unwilling to do. It's very simple. Let's imagine a world where their fantasy actually comes true. How about the cops walk away? ICE stays home. Federal officers turn off the radios. Everyone who enforces the law just stops. Because if these activists really believe that police and ICE are the bad guys, then in theory, their utopia should look amazing if they disappeared, right? Let's take a look at that fantasy. For some reason, these people love to pretend that humans all act like enlightened angels if you just remove the police. No, if you remove law enforcement, you remove deterrence. Do you know what fills that vacuum? Violence, power grabs, extortion, arms groups carving up territory. City's already got a tiny preview of that in 2020. Stores smashed, homes burned, violent crime shot through the roof in places where police stepped back even a little bit. Why don't you go ahead and look up that little failed experiment in Seattle called CHAZ, Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone. It was meant to be a protest space against police brutality, featuring communal art, supply stations, and gatherings, but no official police presence was allowed inside. Well, they let it happen, and shocker, Chaz didn't stay peaceful. Within weeks of becoming a police-free zone, at least 2 people were shot and killed in or around that protest area that they had. 16-year-old, a 19-year-old, all amidst the chaos that replaced conventional policing. The zone experienced other significant violence and disorder, including multiple other shootings, as well as violent incidents, assaults, damage to local property, which prompted local officials to dismantle the zone by early July. Truly a post-apocalyptic dystopia. That was only a few blocks of a city. Now imagine that nationwide. This is not a reimagined society. It's a collapse. Let's keep going. No police means the strong run the weak. You think a social worker is stepping into domestic assault at 2:30 a.m.? You think conflict resolution training fixes a guy with a gun who wants your wallet? You think gentle conversations stop a trafficker? Remove the police, and the people who suffer first are women, kids, the elderly, lower income communities, neighborhoods with high crime, of course, anyone without private security detail. Meanwhile, the activists cheering for this chaos, they live behind the gates. They have alarm systems. They have security staff. The luxury of fantasy. The rest of America does not. So the next time someone says, fuck ICE, or ICE out, or defund the police even, just ask them one question. Who's protecting you when the world stops playing nice? I want to take the time now to say thank you to all law enforcement officers out there. Most of us know that you risk your lives every single day for Americans, even the ones who don't respect you. I'm sorry that you have to go through this right now. I'm hopeful this country gets back on track real soon. So please be safe. Everybody, don't forget to click like, leave some comments. Let me know how you feel about all this. I really do want to know, even if you don't agree. Pass it along to someone who thinks like we do, or someone who doesn't and just might need to hear it. This anti-law enforcement narrative is a slippery slope. I truly believe it is not a slope that we as a country want to go down. So stay aware and stay grounded, stay hopeful, stay in the fray. Love you guys.
All you gotta do is just listen up.